Oh, yeah. So for those of you who don't know, the past 11 days, I was out west in the Bay Area, and then visiting friends, getting to visit another spiritual center out that way, Heart and Soul. Reverend Dr. Andriette, she's came to us via Zoom during COVID, you may remember. So I started out my trip by connecting with that amazing community there, and then I was down at the Silomar and what is known as our SOAR conference. So we are a part of a global organization known as Centers for Spiritual Living, and this was our annual retreat. And I always laugh when I come back from these things. It's like, now I actually need a retreat from the retreat. Whew, because I was there also on the events team, so running around the whole time, introducing people, helping set up for the workshops, having a good old time, as well as getting to speak at the conference, which was an immense privilege and honor as well. So I just want you all to know that something is happening. Something powerful, something transformative. I've been in this movement since I was 5 years old, and I have never seen this type of shift in all those years within our movement. And it started out the first night. We know our beloved Reverend Sonny Cantrell Smith, the founder of Ahava, is now the community spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living. So she kicked us off with the message, yes. Yeah. And for the first time, the executive team, so the spiritual leader, the president of the leadership council, kind of like the board of the greater organization, and the executive director are all women. So they presenced that. Yeah. And they all spoke the first night and set the tone. They set the tone for the change that is coming. And they gave permission to I was just doing the math, the 6 of us out of the 12 or so speakers that are 40-ish to lead the way and to say what needs to be said in order to move this movement forward such that we become relevant and no longer something of the forgotten past like so many other institutions, and specifically religious institutions, right? So, you know, when I spoke, I said it's funny that in this movement, in this field, in this organization, that I am still young. And when I tell my other mom friends this, you know, it's nice, it's refreshing when my daughter says stuff like, you know, Mom, back in the olden days when you were a kid. And I get, from her perspective, it was the olden days. And from our perspective, when Dr. Ernest Holmes founded this movement in the 40s or so and did the predominant amount of his teaching and speaking in the 40s and 50s, that seems like the olden days. So it's all perspective, right? And the world has been catapulted into, change is exponential, and we have seen it through these past few years, especially during COVID, right? We came back to a whole different world. Things were brought up to the surface in our collective consciousness that we need to look at, that need to be healed, that need to be transformed, and we're seeing things happen at this exponential pace. And there's some in our movement that are moving along kind of like this, and maybe a little change. The fact that 3 women are in leadership feels very scary to some. And to others, we're like, yeah, it's about time, right? So being in a room of close to 500 people, representative of the entire movement, and then being brave enough to stand up there and to say, we need to pay attention to what is happening out there, not just within our own walls, so that we can be relevant. We need to look at perhaps not just what Ernest Holmes wrote and said, but what he was actually bringing about in consciousness. Like, what was the essence of his message? And so I spoke the last evening, and I tell you, every day between the hour maybe that I had a slight break, I was rewriting my talk, and I was rewriting my talk. Because every day I started with all these different ideas, and then each day someone said this, and then someone said this, and then someone said this, and it kept moving forward in the narrative that obviously Spirit was wanting to be spoken through each person. So my colleague, my now dear friend, Reverend Dan Granda, gets up there, and he really presents this challenge to folks, and he says, what if in order to be relevant, we have to let go of the jargon? We have to look at new writings and new textbooks and not be so attached to exactly what Ernest Holmes said and the way he said it. Because for those of you who have read any of Holmes' writings, it was definitely written in the context and the culture of the times. It's all he language. It's, when I read some quotes, I'm like, okay, let me translate this a little bit, right? So we are asking folks to distill the message of being open at the top and to listen and to receive what Spirit is saying today through all of us. So just as Dr. Ernest Holmes was a vessel of his time to bring forth this movement, to kind of synthesize psychology and ancient wisdom and various paths of science and Eastern and Western philosophy, at that time it was revolutionary. And he brought to us this idea of how we can get in alignment with this one essence, this one power, this one presence, this divine principle that is always working through us. And so then, Dr. Karen Russo, another friend of our community who has shared with us, she does an incredible talk and shares that part of her, she had to get into touch with that there was a little fear. There was a little fear as we are moving forward that something of our legacy may be lost. And then she shares through her own personal experience how she has come to realize that the legacy is not a person, but the legacy is the principle. It's the principle of our teaching, and that is eternal. That goes beyond any one individual voice that is here to bring it to life. It is eternal. It is the very essence of the universe, and that can never go away. So we had a lot of conversations about change, about navigating change, and about honoring and allowing new voices to presence what Spirit is saying today in order to move our movement to the forefront. So I'm still integrating it all. I literally got back at 11 o'clock last night, and I'm mostly awake. But I want to share with you all just a little bit of what I shared this past week. So let's breathe. So a number of years ago, I had the opportunity to go hiking in the Grand Canyon. Some of you may have heard this story before. And so I'm doing this hike. I'm a few hours in, and it gets to the point where it's it's so vast, right? You look up, and all you see is canyon, and you look down, it's even more canyon. Like the eyes can't even perceive it. So I'm going along, and then all of a sudden the path begins to narrow, and then the wind begins to pick up. Well, it gets to the point where the wind gets so strong that I feel like I'm literally going to be blown off the canyon. And, that feeling of physical fear starts to come up. My knees get a little weak and shaky. My breath tightens. And I get to the point where I am frozen in fear. So I find myself kind of nudging up against the solid canyon wall, gripping for dear life, trying to catch my breath. Meanwhile, my knees are getting weaker and weaker, and I'm sliding down to where I'm kind of squatting and holding onto this rock, and the wind is like shoo, 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 shoo. Meanwhile, I've fallen slightly behind. My friends are ahead somewhere, and here I am just alone in the canyon, it feels like. And I'm like, okay, Rainbow, I'm always at choice. I can choose right now to turn around and go back. I can choose to stay here forever, or I can choose to garner the strength within me and to keep moving forward. So I kept working myself up, using my spiritual tools, breathing, affirming I am safe. Meanwhile, kids are like running and skipping by. So I share this to say, right, there's moments in life when there is an actual physical fear, and then there's other moments, obviously, where my perception of the experience was slightly different than the others that were running past me. So I do my work. I don't know. It felt like an hour. It was probably just a few minutes. And I get to the point where I can stand again, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I literally take 2 steps forward, kind of like around this little bend, and then there's this beautiful plateau. And everyone's there, just kicking back, drinking their water, relaxing. And I look back and I realize that I was stuck in this narrow passage of a wind tunnel. And 2 steps forward was exactly what I desired: the peace, the freedom, the beauty. And I could have chosen to stay in that wind tunnel indefinitely, or I could have, which I did, lean into the power and the strength within me to move forward. So how often in life do we get stuck in the wind tunnel of fear instead of moving through, knowing that just on the other side is exactly what we desire? And I get it. Change. We've been talking about change, and it is scary. There's that part of our brain that is hardwired to keep us safe, that in times of unknown and discomfort and uncertainty, it goes, me, stay safe, freeze, right? Or fawn, or flight. One of the 3 will happen. And we all know that although there is this part of our brain, that it is not the totality of who we are. So we can lean in to the power and the strength of the infinite within us to allow us to simply keep moving. And as we move through the wind tunnel of change, we will experience something greater on the other side. But here's the thing, it's not a one-time thing, y'all. This happens over and over in our lives. And so it did even in that one afternoon of hiking. Another hour or so later, there was another opportunity to move through that fear again. And yet this time, having gone through what I had experienced, and I don't know, maybe it was also a little bit of that runner's high that occurs, the endorphins, but I get to this point where there's an option to kind of go out on this little, I don't know what they call it, ledge or jut out of the canyon. And I see it, and I'm like, I'm going to do that. And I walk out to the edge of something, I swear it was only like just a little wider than this, to where the canyon is all around me. And I stand there, and I raise my arms, and I look down, and then I look up. The freedom and the power of that moment, which involves such deep surrender. To know that I was not alone, to know that there was this power greater than me moving through me, and to move through the fear. The me of a few hours ago in that moment would have never done that. But in that moment, having allowed myself to practice and then to know that I can move through the fear, that I can navigate a new terrain, gave me the courage to move forward and experience something that has stuck with me all these years. That moment of freedom, of surrender, of power. So this is possible in our lives. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but we are always at choice. And the more that we notice what is occurring in our body, the more that we pay attention to the thoughts and the feelings that arise, that we can embrace that with curiosity. To wonder, okay, what is really going on here? What is motivating this fear in the moment? And how can it be an opportunity for me to experience something greater? So, going back to that moment last week when Reverend Dan said, perhaps we need to look at letting go of our jargon and leaning into some newer textbooks and inviting in some newer voices and newer perspectives to bring this movement forward so that we can remain relevant. What occurred in that room, it was like the air got sucked out of the room. Somebody told me they were sitting by someone who, knew Ernest Holmes. And she about fell out of her chair. Understandably. So, there's all these different dynamics going on. So in that moment, being the one that came speaking a day or so after Reverend Dan spoke, I invited people, and I invite us now, with whatever may be in your life, feeling a little bit afraid, feeling scared, feeling nervous about the changes that are coming up in the world, in your lives, in this community, whatever it may be. I invited us to just breathe and to notice what feelings come up and to go deeper in what's behind that. And if you take a moment to really investigate that, most likely it is a deep love for something, or it is a fear of some kind of a loss. So having a deep love for this teaching or this community can be experienced by some as, I love this teaching in this community so much, I want to push it this way so that we can keep being known and grow even more and be relevant. And for some it may be, I love this community and teaching so much, I want to keep it this way so it never changes, so I still feel comfortable and safe and it will always be the community that I love. What did we talk about last month? Polarity. The base of it both is love. And so we need to get beyond binary thinking of good, bad, right, or wrong, and to see what can be birthed in the middle, to recognize that at the core of most of our desires is a love. And sometimes the love for something looks like a fear of it changing or loss. And sometimes the love looks like an evolution for growth. So how can we navigate this dichotomy in order to realize what's deeper, what's truly underneath is the desire for love to be known. And perhaps it's time to ask the question, what does love look like now? And if we have been touched by this teaching, by this movement, if it has changed your life, would you not want that for someone else? And how can we be the ones to bring this opportunity to those who perhaps would never find us otherwise, unless we update, we lose the jargon, and we ask, what is Spirit what is Spirit wanting to say now through each of us in this evolutionary moment of time? And so I find that the work of Adrienne Marie Brown, Emergent Strategy, is a powerful guide to navigate the wind tunnels of change, and especially in any kind of movement or organization. So she has a book out called Holding Change, which is kind of like a workbook, a facilitator's guide, and is something that we are definitely going to be embracing more in our leadership here. So I want to share a little bit from this, of her words. In order to create a world that works for more people, for more life, we have to collaborate on the process of dreaming and visioning and implementing that world. We have to recognize that a multitude of realities have, do, and will exist. Collaborative ideation is a way to get into this. Ideation is the process of birthing new ideas, and the practice of collaborative ideation is about sharing that process as early as possible. This is not to say that there is no space for individual creation. I love the selfishness of closing the world out and unleashing the realm of my imagination and creativity. But how do we disrupt the constant individualism of creation when it comes to society, our shared planet, our resources? The more people who co-create the future, the more people whose concerns will be addressed from the foundational level of the universe. So I encourage each and every one of us to get in touch with our passion, to get in touch with that which is tapping on our heart, to vision, to ideate, to dream, and to listen. Spirit is still speaking. Are you listening? To get curious, not only to what Dr. Ernest Holmes would say if he was alive today, but to employ our creative imagination and ask, what would the essence, the consciousness of Dr. Holmes say, speak, or teach in 2050? Because that is where we need to start today. What are the seeds we are planting today in order for the next generation to have a planet, to have a community where they belong, where they are safe, where they are loved, where they are valued for all of who they are? So how can we begin to imagineer our lives and our society? By planting those seeds in the fertile ground of our collective consciousness right here, right now. To become the community that honors and embraces all bodies, that lifts up the wisdom and the insight and the perspective of marginalized voices of the global majority by centering diverse perspectives, knowing that there is not one way to be on this planet, nor is there one way that holds the key to divine wisdom and insight. God, spirit, life, the universe works through all beings. But if you were to look at our recent past, it would seem that those who have the microphone look one way. And now is the time to understand what nature tells us, that nature thrives on a diverse atmosphere. So as we embody and we allow and we center more diverse perspectives, we can lean into the wisdom that has always been there, but we can give it a voice by those of us in places of power and privilege, opening up a seat at the table, honoring, sharing the microphone, using our privilege to hear, to cultivate the wisdom of all voices. So are you willing to embrace the essence of curiosity and be that vessel for spirit? Take a breath. Notice how you're feeling. We must work together with people of all walks of life to envision, to reimagine a world that works for all, even when it seems hard or impossible, even when through the discomfort of the wind tunnel of change. When we move through the discomfort of what we know and our way, we can embrace the nuance of the complex world that we live in and allow something new to emerge. So it's happening, y'all. I can't quite describe it, but I'll just say one of the last speakers, the last morning when we left, shared a vision, a very kind of earth-centered vision, inviting us to move into a consciousness of, what do I want to say? I don't want to say because it's not my words and I haven't quite integrated what they shared, but I'll just say more earth-centered, more nature-based, more of indigenous wisdom. And when this person shared this vision and did this practice with us, not everyone in the room, but myself, someone here, someone there, were moved immediately to tears and this energy of like, and we kind of make eye contact and feel this. Meanwhile, the band gets on and they're playing this Joy Life song and other people jump up and dancing and we're all like, what is going on? You know, like, I'm not there. And normally I would be there, right? I'm the like, yeah, let's dance. And we're like, something just happened. And several of us felt it and we're integrating it. And I just have to say that I'm happy to be a part of that. I'm happy to have had the opportunity to connect with other colleagues and then to speak that vision and to have so many others come up to me, to us, to say, yes, thank you, I want to connect, I want to be a part of this, I've thought of leaving this organization, I've thought of doing my own thing, I feel isolated here, but yes, I want to be a part of this new, what is becoming. So I invite you to stay curious, to keep listening, and then to take inspired action. And if you're willing, repeat after me. I am willing to move through the wind tunnel of change and take inspired action. I got the power. That's right. All right. So let's get about what we're here to be about and turn this moment over into prayer. Take a deep breath. So in this moment, I recognize the one life, this energy, this power, this presence that is love, that is freedom, that is creativity, that is the eternal evolutionary essence of life itself. Knowing that this cosmic isness from which I live and move and have my being is still speaking through me, as me, right here, right now, as love, as peace, as freedom, as wholeness. And as I know this to be true for myself, I know this must be true for each and every one of us. For truly, we are one, inextricably bound. And there is only one thing happening right here, right now. As I open up and allow life, universal principle, to have its way in, as, and through me. To listen to what is tapping on my heart, to what I am called to be, do, and become this day, to activate all of my unique experiences and passions and talents into this now moment of great discovery, of a love revolution. Knowing that something is happening beyond words as we each say yes to remaining open in heart, in mind, in spirit, to lead the way courageously, knowing that we are backed up by the power of the infinite, that we are supported and can lean into the power of the universe to lead, to guide, to carry us forward in moments when we feel we cannot take those steps, and to garner the strength and the power of this beloved community, of the one life moving through us, knowing that the way out is through, and all that we desire is already done in the mind of God. And so we are here to say yes and to allow this vision to move us forward, always forward, looking up, knowing that the next greatest yet to be expression and experience for our community, for our lives, for our families, for our planet is making itself known right here, right now, if we are willing to listen and take action. It will be done. For right here, right now, I say it is done through me. And I say yes, and let it be. And so it is.